This week's video is about cheap versus expensive art supplies, specifically for watercolor. If you're like me and you're trying to decide what to add to your wish list, then this video will help you to know what's important and what matters most to you in regards to watercolor painting. So, how important is the price of watercolor supplies? Let's find out together. Today, I'm testing my cheapest paints on 3 different pieces of watercolor paper of varying quality and prices. And later this week, I'll do the same test with my most expensive paint and my medium priced paint. And to keep it as fair as I can, I'll be painting the same thing using the same color on the same size paper. That is actually part of what got me curious about this because I had these 2 paintings of a tent because my husband saw one and he was like, "Oh, is that for me? It looks like my tent, except my tent is blue." So I painted another one and I ended up using different paper for it, and I think different paint as well. I chose a small piece of paper so that I could recreate each one fairly quickly. And I actually ended up doing the entire experiment in one sitting. So even though I couldn't replicate everything exactly, it did help to do it all in the same day so that there was less variation and I wasn't forgetting how I did things. I will also share details and links in the description for the different products and where I got each one. So, right now, I am just labeling each piece of paper so that I don't get them mixed up later. And I'm labeling what type of paper it is and which type of paint I'm using because in this video, I'm just testing the less expensive paint, but in the next ones, I will do the more expensive and the mid-price paint. So also in the corner, you see the coffee mug that I painted. That was actually inspired by another YouTuber that I followed and watched her tutorial. So I wanted to give her a shout out. It's Watercolor Carrie, and she is so fun to listen to and watch. And she has lots of great tips about painting. And she is about to or just hit 500 subscribers. So I'm super excited for her, and you should definitely go check her channel out. And I'll link to that in the description too. But I did a different color sticky note for the back of each one to also give me another signal of which paper was which, or either which paint. But anyway, these are the 2 tent paintings that I mentioned were kind of the same painting, but on different paper and inspired this test. So I am using the same brush for all of these paintings. So that part will be the same. And I did kind of get more the hang of it as I went and realized that I should paint all 3 paintings with each type of paint at one time. So do the sky for all 3. And then by the time I get to the next part, the other one is dry. And so I can do the ground and then go to the next one and then do the trees. So that's kind of how I started doing it. But I did just paint one first. And so the tent is kind of off-centered, but I just decided to go with it and do that for every single one after that. And I did change a little bit, but I think it stayed the same enough to make it a pretty fair test and comparison. So one thing I learned though is that my inexpensive paper, it's the one from Walmart, the Be Inspired paper, it took the longest to dry. And I never knew this, but I often say that I'm very impatient with the paint drying. And that might be why, because I've mostly used that paint and it just seemed to take forever to dry. Unless I was out in the sun, that might speed it along a little. But anyway, that is really good to know. So if that's something that frustrates you, then more expensive watercolor paper might dry a lot faster for you. But even now you can see how the less expensive one is kind of grainy, the paint for the sky and everything. My least expensive paper was also the most difficult to write on. So if you do a lot of line and wash, then having a more expensive paper might benefit you in that regard as well. Because my less expensive paper is a little bit bumpier. So you can find other inexpensive paper that isn't as rough and bumpy, but all of these were cold press, and it was interesting to see how different each of them were. So here are the final three. I would love to hear what you think and which one looks the best in your opinion. But I think the biggest difference is the experience while you're painting and using these. Some are more difficult to mix, and some are a little grainier or maybe kind of damaging the paper. But I do think so far, looking at these three, that the more expensive paper is my favorite, and that's partially because it is a brighter white. So I think I need to try Arches because they have a natural white color and a bright white, and I think I just like the bright white. And I've been buying some of the more natural white colors. So you may be able to find a mid price point that is a brighter white as well, and a cheaper too. I've definitely bought a cheaper one that was a brighter white. So I know just because it's more white doesn't mean it's more expensive. And it doesn't mean it's better. Some people prefer it not to be as bright white. But the one on the right is the more expensive paper, and the one on the far left is the least expensive paper. And I'll share more of my final thoughts in the last video comparing each type of paint and each type of paper. The Dollar Tree came in a 5-pack, which I really appreciated because I get overwhelmed by a lot of choices and a lot of products. So when I saw the Dollar Tree kind, I had already bought the other, I believe, or I was just scared of the Dollar Tree stuff not being good enough. So I bought them around the same time. But I have been really impressed with what I can do with the Dollar Tree products, but I will say they are annoying to work with, but I think they'll give you enough of an idea as to whether you enjoy watercolor or not. So let me tell you my frustrations with them. So, well, first I can tell you what I like, and that is the size, and like they don't take up much space, and the colors. So it gives you blue, yellow, red, and the red is more of a pink, which I did not like at first because I'm like, no, that's not what I was taught in elementary school. Like, you mix with red. But since then, I've been watching all these videos that talk about color theory and color mixing, and they're like, yeah, actually having a pink to mix with is better. And my Winsor & Newton does not have a red, and I have to kind of mix the pink to make it into a red. So that was interesting about the Dollar Tree kind. And it's the brand is Crafter's Square, and then it has a white and a black, which I appreciate. Those are the colors that I wanted to start with. So if that's you, then this is great. And actually the red, the color I'm saying, it is a beautiful coral. So I love using this color just by itself. Whereas a straight red, I don't use as much as I use this color. So that is something to consider and think about. So I put my Dollar Tree paints in this palette, and what is it, 15 spots here. And I did some color mixing to mix the colors that I use most frequently, but they kind of dried and divided.
which is interesting. I'm also nervous that they will fall out because they're like so cracked and crumbly. And this looks like paper. Like it's kind of strange and interesting to work with. So I'm more careful with this palette than I thought I was going to have to be. But as I said, it does work. And I can mix colors, like pretty much all the colors that I wanted to, like a dusty blue, a kind of dark dusty green. I don't know. I've been happy with the selection there. But I will also say, even when I wet it and I'm like trying to activate it, it still takes a long time. And it has a lot of little specks, like it's still not completely mixed. So that is a recurring problem with these paints. Sometimes I kind of like the little specks and how it looks speckledy, but a lot of times I'll get them on my brush, wipe them off to where it doesn't have those anymore. Like it would have really dark blue speckles on the sky, and I just kind of swiped those up. I wanted to talk about this paper now, the more expensive paper. And you just see those jagged edges. It was like, this paper was not cutting as well as my other with my straight edge cutter. So, I mean, I don't mind the look of it. It's just that this edge and this edge aren't like that, and then this edge and this edge are. So like, does that bother you?
Would you consider liking and subscribing, not only to help you see my next videos in this series, but also because I just started this channel a month ago and have less than 50 subscribers at the time of recording this. Actually, it's like 35 subscribers. So subscribing is free for you, and it helps other people to see these videos, and it encourages me to keep making them. So thank you if you've already subscribed. I am having so much fun with this channel and love having you on the journey with me.